Malachem l'sholoi, Malachei Yasholoi, Malachei Elyon Mimelech, Malachei Amelochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malachei Amelochim, HaKadosh,
When a teacher teaches, or when a parent raises a child, the objective is that the student should come away knowing the lesson, and the child should come away a mature adult. So what the parents give the children and what a teacher gives the student can't remain in the words of the student, of the parent, or of the teacher. It has to become the words of the student. So you see, when people belonging to a certain group or to a certain school, when they all use the same words, literally the same words, in expressing the ideas that they were taught, then you know that the teacher is ineffective. And you also know that they don't really understand what they learned. Because one of the signs of understanding is that you can use your own words. But if you're quoting word for word exactly what the textbook says, then you haven't gotten past the textbook. It hasn't become your understanding. It hasn't become your knowledge. It hasn't become your information. And that's why it doesn't come out in your words. It comes out in somebody else's words. So in order for a teacher to be effective, the lesson has to be delivered in such a way that the student walks away thinking, I know. It makes sense to me. If he's very effective, then the student should walk away saying, I always knew that. I mean, how else could it be? Of course, it has to be that way. Makes total sense. So maybe I never put it in those words, but I always knew that. When God creates the world, He creates the world in such a way that the characteristics that He gives each creature, every one of His creations, those characteristics are meant to be the characteristics of that creature. So when God gives life to the body, it's not that the body should run around animated by a soul that is alive, like a puppet on a string. The idea is that the soul should go into the body and the body should come alive. And in order to do that, the soul has to not only influence the body, but enter the body. It has to take on the body's limitations. It has to take on the body's abilities and function and live through the body. But not that the soul should be alive and the body should be dead, but the soul will drag the body through 80 years of living. The body has to come alive to such a degree where it becomes very difficult to tell where the soul ends and the body begins, because they're so thoroughly integrated that you don't know where one ends and the other begins. So a pain of the soul immediately shows up as a pain in the body. A pain in the body suggests a pain in the soul. They are symbiotic. It's not just a living soul dragging a dead body. So what that means in terms of the body is that the soul comes into the body and the body comes alive. Now you might think, once the body has come alive, because the soul has entered, now a living body can walk, talk, cry, hear, see, smell. It's a living body. But the truth is that in order for the body to walk, the soul has to take another step into the body, many more steps. Because entering the body just to the degree that the body comes alive is only the first step. The second step is that soul energy becomes mental energy when it enters the brain. And then that energy, brain energy, enters the heart and it becomes emotion energy. And then emotion energy enters the imagination and it becomes thought. And thought energy enters into words, into the mouth, and it becomes speech. And then speech crystallizes, coagulates, and it becomes action. So in order for the foot to move, the soul, S-O-U-L, the soul has to become the soul has to become physical movement of the foot. The soul has to become that. Now, how does a soul that is purely metaphysical become physical action? It comes through many stages. But what is happening is that it's investing itself, it's surrendering itself to the body and saying, what kind of movement, what kind of activity, what kind of faculty are you capable of? And whatever it is you're capable of, that's the kind of energy I'll provide for you. So it comes to the I, and it says, what can you do? I'm not going to ask you to think. I'm not going to ask you to talk. But you're capable of vision, so I will see through you. So the I is merely the channel through which the soul sees. And the mouth is the channel through which the soul talks. And that's called being fully alive. So when a person can't speak, they're missing a little bit of life. They're not fully alive. When they can't walk, they're not fully alive. Because life has not taken on the form of movement of the foot for them. And movement of the foot is life. You can also call it dance. But dancing means that there is life in the foot. And life is a soul. Life is a totally metaphysical thing. And yet it's in the foot. It's in the actions of the foot. So it's not just that the soul gives life to the body and then the body does things. The soul gives life to the body and then the soul does things with the body. And the same is true with God creating the world. It's not just that God creates the world, He creates water and fire, and now the fire burns and the water runs downhill. In addition to creating the water and creating the fire, God has to create downhill movement, and He has to create heat and burning. And then He burns in the fire, and He rolls down the hill in the water. So for God to get involved in such specific activities, God has to come through many, many, many stages. God's creative power, God's life energy has to come through infinite stages until it has finally been reduced down to the activity of a turtle, for example. Because the activity of a turtle is an aspect and an expression of God's creative power. Not just the existence of the turtle, its nature, its behavior, its appearance, its color. Everything comes from God, which means God has to restrict himself and filter his energy until it is so reduced that it can become the gray of the turtle's shell, the hardness of the turtle's shell, the slowness of the turtle's movements, and so on. And a good analogy for that is when the teacher wants to explain a complex idea, he has to present it in the form of a fable or a parable or a story. He has to compare it to something similar but more physical, because the idea itself is too abstract for the student. Now, the more abstract the concept is, the more difficult it is to present it to the student, the more examples, parables, and fables the teacher is going to have to use. So when the student finally understands the parable, the story of the fox who saw the grapes on the other side of the fence, and he squeezed himself through the crack in the fence, and he ate till he was bursting and then couldn't get out because he had gained all that weight. He couldn't get out the crack in the fence. So he had to fast and lose all that weight and then be able to get out. So the whole thing was in vain. This is not a story about a fox or grapes or a hole in a fence. It's a story about being greedy. It's a story about how greed doesn't pay. It's a story about being thoughtful, think ahead, see what the consequences of your behavior is going to be. But when you tell the story in the form of a fable, the student could get really caught up in the fable itself. And instead of saying, so what should I be careful of, and where am I greedy, and how do I avoid being greedy, the student is wondering, where in the fence is that crack? Or how many grapes did it take for the fox to be so fat that he couldn't get out of the...
What happened to the fox?
Or where's the fox now?
Wait.
So if the student raises his hand and he says, how come only the fox did it? How come the turtle didn't do it? So, okay, the turtle did it, all right? So, how come the turtle? Why not a fish? Oh, yeah, it happened to a fish. What's the difference who it happened to? You're missing the point, right? So the student, understanding well the story, thinks that the whole message is the story. Later, when he gets older, he realizes, hey, teacher wasn't even talking about a fox at all. He was talking about greed. But if the student never gets any smarter than he was in second grade, and all he ever needed to know he learned in kindergarten, so that's it. He's got the story and the message about greed he'll never get. Now, why is it possible for the student to completely miss the point and think that the story is really about a fox? Precisely because the teacher wanted the student to really absorb the message and the lesson about greed. So he had to present it in such a way that a child's mind, a student's mind, can grasp it, can understand it, can appreciate it, can even enjoy it. Because when you enjoy an idea, you really absorb it well. So he presented it in the form of a story with a fox so that the student can not only hear the teacher say you shouldn't be greedy, but that the student should walk away and say, oh, I know you shouldn't be greedy. Of course. It's obvious. But the danger of presenting an idea so graphically, so perfectly adjusted to the student, the danger is that the student will walk away thinking that what he understood is all there is. And he's going to walk away saying, this is my idea, I never needed a teacher in the first place. Like this guy who said to me, he said, I resent the idea that that you have to push commandments down people's throats and insist that God commands you to do such and such. I don't need to be told what's right and wrong. I know right from wrong. I know you shouldn't kill, shouldn't steal, shouldn't commit adultery. I know that. I don't need God to tell me that. Well, that would be very impressive if he had said that to me 3,306 years ago. Because 3,305 years ago, God said it first, and has been saying it ever since. And this kid grew up in a Jewish environment, and maybe not totally observant, but certainly Jewish, and so he must have heard over and over and over again that you're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to steal, you're not allowed to commit adultery. Nobody told him who the author of those words were, but it's certainly not him. These are not original ideas to him. So in this world, in civilization today, you can't claim to have discovered on your own that you shouldn't kill. Chances are you heard it from your grandmother. So a student can walk away and say, oh, I don't need anybody to tell me that. I know that. Yeah, well, how did you get to know that? You don't even remember. Because the message and the lesson was delivered so convincingly and so painlessly that you don't even remember the day that you discovered that that was true. It just seems like you always knew that. So it's precisely because the teacher was really effective and got the message through efficiently, that's what enables the student to walk away and say, I never had a teacher, never learned a thing in school. Well, then how do you know you're not supposed to kill, steal, and commit adultery? Oh, I know that. How do you know 2 and 2 is 4? Well, everybody knows that. So the same thing happens when God creates the world. Because God wants to give life to his creations in such a way that the life becomes really you. When he gives a personality trait to an animal, he makes it belong to the animal. Not that the animal created it, not that the animal has it of his own, but it's given so thoroughly and therefore ingested and assimilated so completely that it's very easy to make the mistake and think, this is my life. It's my life. But from this, we get a definition of godliness and a definition of evil. How is it that in God's world there exist those things that are holy and godly and those things that are unholy and evil? Let's see how the Alter Rebbe says it.
Where are you?
In chapter 22. And that's why all unholiness and all sin is called other gods. Other gods. Why? Because the life that God gives to them doesn't come from God's inner will. It's not his true will. When God creates that which is prohibited, for example, God created the mortality of the human being, that we are so mortal that another mortal human being can cause the death of his fellow human being. One person can kill another. How is that possible? Why is that possible? Because God created mortality to that degree that even little silly things can actually cause the death of a human being. So why did God create human mortality? Because he wants people to die? No. Why did God create the physical possibility of one person stealing what belongs to another? Why are people's possessions stealable? Because God wants it to be stolen? No. Why do we have an appetite? Why do we have an appetite for sin? So that we will sin? No. We have an appetite for sin so that we don't sin. Only with a little bit of effort. So when God creates all those things that are not kosher, not holy, not permissible, he doesn't create them out of a true desire. A true desire would mean he wants it for itself. He likes it for what it is. And evil or sin, God does not like for what it is. He created it for a purpose. Its existence does not serve a purpose by itself. If it produces what God wants it to produce, then its existence has been justified. So that's called not creating with your face, because the face implies a real interest, a personal interest. When God creates the stuff that is unholy and unkosher, he creates it disinterestedly. He's not really excited about this thing for itself. How then does it get created? Rather, it is created from the back of holiness, from the hind side of holiness. And what do we mean the back? What is the back of God? The back of God means like a person who gives something, delivers a package to his enemy. He doesn't really want to do it. So how does he do it? He throws it to him over his shoulder. Because he is turning his face away out of hatred. So he doesn't want to face him, and yet he has to hand it to him. So how does he do that? He throws it over his shoulder. Above, in creation, the face of God means God's inner personal desire. That which God creates willingly and enthusiastically. And that's true of all those things that God creates that are close to him, close to his heart, and that makes up the holy stuff or the holiness in this world. But the unholy stuff, the impure stuff, that's the stuff that God finds despicable. And therefore God doesn't give it energy from his inner desire, and from his true will, as if God wants this evil or this unholiness to exist. Rather, he creates the unholy like a person throwing a gift or a package to his enemy over the shoulders, without real will. So when God creates that which he desires truly, he creates it face to face. When he creates that which exists, which he needs to serve a different purpose, then he's creating it over the shoulder. So what does it mean? God hates this, and yet he creates it. So in the analogy, you can say, you may have to deliver a package to a person you hate. Why? Because it may be your job. There can be reasons that will force you to deliver a package to someone you don't like. But why would God ever have to give life to that which he hates? If he hates it, why does he have to create it at all? So what does it mean that God creates it, but he hates it? So the analogy for that would be, if you say that you love someone for their money, if you love them for their money, do you love them at all? If you say this lawnmower is an excellent lawnmower, the best in the world, you really like the lawnmower? No. You don't need a lawnmower. You'd rather not have a lawnmower, but you got to cut the grass, or the grass has to get cut. So in order to have the grass cut, then you have to have a lawnmower. So do you want a lawnmower or don't you want a lawnmower? Do you like this lawnmower or don't you like the lawnmower? On the one hand, you can say, yes, I want it and I like it. Given that I have to mow the lawn, this is the lawnmower I would want. So you can say, yes, you like something because of the function that it serves. But it's also true to say that if this thing exists for you only for the function that it serves, then it itself you don't like at all. In fact, you despise it. So in a human being, if you say that you love someone for their money, it's the same as saying I hate them. Or better yet, the person who feels that they are loved only for their money feels hated, feels despised. So what does it mean God hates the evil in the world? He hates it means he creates it for its function, not for itself. So why did God create sin? So that people will have the reward for avoiding it. Or that if you don't avoid it, but eventually do tshuva and regret the sin, then that becomes a virtue. So in order to have the virtue of regretting and apologizing and making up after the fight, that's why fights exist. Only for the making up afterwards. So since it exists only for its function, for some other purpose, not for itself, therefore it's called hated, despised. Because true love means loving it as it is for itself without any ulterior motive or consideration. It's not what it does, it's what it is. It's not what comes from it, but it itself. So compared to that love, creating something for a purpose and for a function is hatred. So when God creates that which is meant to become good, then until it does become good, it is hated. And God creates it over the shoulder, with his face averted. Now, what happens when you avert your face? The word is avert, isn't it? Whatever. When you turn your face away from your enemy, you're not only being impolite, you're not only sending a message that says, I can't look at you, I hate you, but you're actually accomplishing something. What you accomplish by turning your face is that you prevent any part of you, any part of yourself, from getting involved in the delivery of this package. So that when you deliver the package, it doesn't bring with it any part of yourself at all. If you walked up to your enemy's house and you handed him a package, which you had to deliver, you get paid for that, and you smile at him, then he says, "Oh, you don't hate me anymore?" You say, "No, I still do." So, "Oh, because you were smiling, I thought maybe." I said, "No, I just smile when I deliver packages." You don't want that to happen. So when you deliver the package to your enemy, you don't face him. You certainly don't smile. And by doing that, you prevent any kind of human expression, any kind of personal involvement in the delivery of this package. So that in effect what you're saying to your enemy is, I am delivering the package, but the I does not come with the package. So you're not getting it from me. It's through me, by way of me, but not from me, because I don't bring you anything. I hate you. You're my enemy. When that happens, then a second thing occurs, and that is that if I'm not interested in giving you any part of myself, then even as I deliver the package and I'm bringing it to you, I'm not really giving it to you. Because I'm not interested in you. I'm not focused on you. I don't like you. So it's not coming from me, and I don't intend it for you. So this becomes a totally, how should we say this? A totally removed, disinterested exchange or interaction. It's not from me, it's not about you, it's just the package. Nothing personal. Now, a person can say, I understand that you're my enemy. I know you're not really investing any part of yourself in this delivery. I understand that. And I also understand that you couldn't care less whether I got the package or not. And you couldn't care less whether I want the package or not. You're not interested in me at all. You're just delivering to my address, not to me. I understand that. But it just so happens that what you're delivering is really good, and it's really important, and I really need it badly. So thank you for delivering the package. That doesn't happen. Because if it's not from you, and it's not about me, then the goodness or the kindness that exists in the objective act of delivering a package will not have any beneficial effect at all. It won't be appreciated at all. In fact, it will become poison. In that not only won't I be grateful, but I will resent you for having delivered the package. Did it have to be you? Couldn't they find anybody else to deliver this package? Like we were speaking this morning, the spoiled child who has been treated that way, packages were delivered, ice cream was given, money was given, but not from the heart, and therefore not intended for the child's heart. So the child learns that it's not about you and it's not about me, it's about the ice cream. So when you give me ice cream, it's not an act of kindness from you to me, It's just ice cream. So there will be no gratitude. There will be no element of human connection or human response. It's going to be instead, oh, so you're giving me ice cream. So you see, I do deserve. So how come you don't give me more? So the kindness becomes the poison. The kindness becomes the weapon to use against the person who expressed that kindness. Because, in fact, kindness can't exist outside of a relationship. So when it's not face-to-face, when it's not